Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very beautiful and profound hour of sacred communion, really in a virtual context. We're going to get to dive in for the next hour with one of my favorite human beings, spiritual teachers, guides, inspiration, sacred activists. His name is Andrew Harvey, and today we're going to go on a journey with him into the sacred alchemy of rebellious joy as your path through turmoil, what the mystics teach us about radical hope, healing, and regeneration. So, in my role at the Shift Network, I get exposed to many of the brightest lights in the world. And for me, Andrew is one of the most important because he's not only a mystical scholar with decades of really steeping himself in the literature and practices of the world, he's also somebody who really bridges from the realms of deep spiritual insight into the practicality of how do we change the world from that standpoint, and particularly how do we cultivate the dimensions of our being that allow us to be sacred catalysts for change, sacred activists. And we're going to talk a lot about today about joy and the centrality of joy. So with that said, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Stephen, thank you for everything. Thank you for being such a wonderful co-conspirator over many years. And I can't think of anybody to talk about joy with that I would rather do. So bless you.
So let's dive in. And I also want to let everybody know right up front that we do have a brand new program with Andrew. We've been sort of starved for a new program from Andrew for a while. He's been writing a magnum opus on Mary Magdalene, but we have a brand new one that we'll talk about towards the end of the hour. It's called The Ultimate Rebellion Against Darkness and Despair. So more to come from Andrew. So, Andrew, I'd love for you to share a little bit. I know you've got such a vast spiritual history, but particularly about your understanding and your journey into why the centrality of joy as a state
Oh,
of being, to sort of cultivate that, even when there's often a lot of signals that despair, darkness, heartache, suffering. Why cultivate joy at the heart of our spiritual practice to really better the world?
well, that's a wonderful question. And I'd like to plunge in and say that I learned myself the necessity of cultivating joy at the worst time of my life. And I'd just like to tell you a story about that. I was the disciple of a very powerful woman teacher. But when I fell in love with the man who was going to be my husband, she said, there is no room for homosexuals in the mother's world. At which moment I realized that she was homophobic and couldn't possibly be the divine mother. I was her chief disciple. I'd written a book about her. I had to disavow her, and she lied about what she said, and my life was plunged into horror, terror, chaos. The man who became my husband was dying of cancer. Our lives were in shreds. People were throwing bombs through our windows. I was denounced as the Antichrist, which actually secretly rather thrilled me because it's rather an extraordinary distinction to be denounced as the Antichrist. To put it simply, everything was shattered. And at first, Eric and I, paralyzed by terror, paralyzed by the horror that we were living, paralyzed by him dying, by my whole career being in shreds, by being vilified, by being humiliated, by being spat on actually in the streets. And then one day, Eric said, we're not going to live in fear. We're going to live in joy, and joy is going to be our rebellion against this madness. Every time we get a death threat, he said, we're going to dance. And we'd already pledged ourselves eternally to Tina Turner. So we discovered Tina Turner yoga. So every time we got a death threat, we put on Simply the Best, or Proud Mary was our favorite. And we danced and we danced and we danced. And because of that choice, I realized something absolutely essential about what it takes to get through a dark night. And it was a long dark night and a terrible dark night. What it takes is cultivating joy as the most important resource you could possibly have. Because joy is the mother of resilience. Joy is the mother of courage. Joy is the mother of fortitude. Joy is the mother of sacred energy. Joy is the mother of passion for life. Joy is the mother of committing yourself, whatever happens, to the truth that you know is real. And I learned that in that terrible time. And now that I'm part of a group of people that are trying with all that we have to wake the world up to what's happening, a global dark night, and then to give people the tools with which to rise to this challenge. Now I finally decided it's time for me to give to anyone who wants it everything that I've learned about training for joy. Because in the years since that, I have had a very, very difficult time of it because I had to introduce sacred activism to millions of people who seemingly didn't want to do anything. And then, as the visions came for regeneration, for the birth that could be possible out of this darkness, I've been giving everything that I've learned to people to prepare them for the massively difficult journey ahead, which I know now can only be taken if you train yourself in joy. And the reason why joy is so central is this. And this is a lovely story, Stephen. And I don't know if you know this story. It's about Brigu Varuni. It's in the Taittiriya Upanishad. And I'll tell you the story as I was told it by a wonderful old sadhu in Benares. He said, look, there was this guy called Brigu Varuni. He was enlightened. And he had a son whom he adored. And he knew he was going to die soon. So he said to his son, you better start meditating strongly now because I want to die knowing that you know. So the son says, yes. And he goes up to the top of the mountain. And after 1 year, he comes down and says, the secret of the universe is food because everything needs food. And dad says, not bad, but no cigar. And this goes on for a few years, and he gives ever more clear answers. Gets to the stage where he says, Dad, the secret of the universe is mine. Dad says, yes, you've got close. That's not the answer. Go up for another year. And at the end of that year, he sees his son coming down the mountain, and his son is radiating light, and he has tears of bliss are running down his face. And his father runs up to him, the sciatica that I have, and embraces him and holds him and says, I know that you know, but tell me what you know so that I can rejoice in it. And the son says, and these are the most important words in the greatest Hindu scriptures, the Upanishads. He says, from the great bliss, everything is created. In the great bliss, everything is sustained. And to the great bliss, everything returns. This is the highest mystical teaching. This is the highest mystical teaching. He repeats it twice. And what that supreme teaching, which is echoed in all of the greatest mystical system, reveals to us is that the nature of the divine itself is the Mahananda, the great bliss, the great joy. So if you want to live a divine human life, and if you want to rise to the challenge of this great global dark night, and if you want to be a flame of peace and truth and compassion and encouragement to all your friends and to the world that is going through so much agony, so much distress, then the chief thing that you need to know is those words, and the chief thing that you need to do to sustain your energy, to sustain your creativity, to sustain your hope, to sustain your passion, is to align yourself in every way you can with the ordinary joys of life that are secret rays of the secret sun of the great bliss that is streaming towards us from the beloved. Can I tell you another story? Because this is really a gorgeous story. And it's about somebody I was talking to you about just before we got on. One of my greatest friends in this world is a woman called Linda Tucker. And Linda Tucker, she was a model. a grand, beautiful model, and she hated it and she wanted to kill herself, but decided not to and go on a safari in her country of South Africa instead. And on that safari, the jeep ran down and they were surrounded by wild lions. And suddenly, through the lions, there came a woman walking with her grandchild on her shoulder. And this woman turned out to be Maria Cosa, who was the woman, the shaman queen of the White Lions. And to cut a long story short, Linda became her disciple. And when Maria Cosa was about to die, she said, Linda, I'm going to do something that has never been done in the African shamanic tradition. I'm going to make a white woman the guardian of the white lions, the most sacred creatures on earth, the ones that the African shamanic tradition believe that if they die, the world dies. You have got to step up now. And Linda was, on the one hand, very thrilled, but on the other hand, absolutely aware that to become the guardian of the white lions would be to put your life in danger. And of course, that's what's happened. And there's been threatened endlessly and every day. She has death threats, etc., because these lions are ultimately sacred. And of course, people want to make money out of them because they're so sacred. So Linda said to Maria Cosa, how the hell am I going to get through the agony of being the guardian of these beings, knowing that my life is in danger and their life is in danger? And Maria Cosa said one word 3 times. She said, celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Because Maria Cosa, as an enlightened shaman, knew that if you are met, as you will be met in this world, if you stand up for the truth, if you really stand up for truth and compassion and justice by enormous forces that don't want anything that you do to work, if you succumb to paralysis and despair in the face of that, those forces have won. So when you meet, as I've met countless times, Stephen knows all about it, division, craziness, etc., etc., etc. I have taken those words of Maria Cosa to heart. And when I have celebrated my life, God, my friends, my body, the world, nature, Bach, then I am filled up with the sacred energy and truth and power and love that gives me the guts and the spirit and the relentless resoluteness to go forward, whatever happens.
Mm. So beautifully shared. I love the example with the white lions as well. And it so it really strikes me as what you're saying is that it's like if we're going to really go to the full potential of our impact in the positive way in the world, we have to have this fuel. This is the
I'm
fuel
saying
that
something much more than that, Stephen. I'm saying that in a great evolutionary crisis, when everything is at stake, aligning with the great bliss that is the creative force of the universe is the one real true hope for our survival.
Mm.
Because only that can give us the energy and the wisdom and the power.
There's fuel for our personal journey, and it's a requirement for the collective journey to download this in, to align with this, to sort of have it be the sort of the current of the birthing of a new pattern. And so that's really beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about the path too, so obviously extreme circumstances with you and Eric and the situation dancing to Tina Turner in the midst of death threats. It's a beautiful
Yeah,
image. So
it's a good
let's talk
thing to
about
do.
what are some of the pathways that as a spiritual practice to sort of like find those currents of joy to connect with the currents of bliss, even when there might be debilitating illness, breakdowns financially, there might be climate crises that these are happening around everyone in some form or another. That what
Yeah.
to make it authentic, to sort of work with the authentic response, sometimes the grief, the loss, the despair, and find this current, this bliss, joy current that wants to come through us as well.
I think there are really 3 essential kinds of joy that we need to connect with all as rays of the great Mahananda. The first is that, look, this is a global dark night. Humanity's entire survival is threatened. You all know that somewhere. The most important source of joy is always mystical practice. So the first kind of joy that you must find in the depths of yourself is that part of you that is original blessing, the divine consciousness that shares in the great Mahananda. And the simpler the practice, the better. I always advise people just say the name of God by whatever way you know that name, and say it with tremendous love, tremendous devotion, tremendous secret, quiet intensity. And the mirror of your heart will be cleansed, and you will eventually see with your open eyes this whole universe drenched in divine light and radiating from divine light. And that will give you joy even in the worst situations. So the first source of joy is to tremendously increase the intensity of your devotion to the divine in practice so that you can be taken by the divine, and it will take you, it's longing to take you into a direct revelation of your non-dual relationship with everything and your non-dual relationship with the great mystical white light that is creating everything and manifesting itself in everything. That's the first source of joy. Second source of joy is in really celebrating all the forms of sacred inspiration that you have already in your life. I've had a very, very wild and difficult life in some ways, but I have had always access to tremendous joy because I love the sacred arts. I love painting. I love the great mystical poets of humanity, and have done an awful lot of work on trying to make them available to other people. I love classical music. Bach. On the worst days, put on Bach. Bach will be like a kind of sublime chiropractor and adjust yourself to this robust joy that everywhere dances in Bach. So the second source of joy is sacred inspiration. And that, of course, includes the inspiration, the rapture, the immense calm joy that you feel when you're in nature, when you're on Limantor Beach, or when you're in Utah, or when you're at the Grand Canyon, or when you're just in a park and suddenly see the light coming through the green trees. Inspiration is the second source of joy. The third source is in truly celebrating your relationships. I found, especially during COVID, I was, as all of you were, isolated, but there were two friends that I have, Carolyn Mace and my great friend Ellen Gunter, and we're all the same age, so we all felt that we could go at any time and that we could just celebrate together as often as possible. And our friendship became indissoluble and beautiful and mutually encouraging and mutually nurturing. So cultivate the heaven out of your friendships, cultivate the heaven out of your personal love relationships, cultivate the heaven out of your relationships with your animals. I have the blessing of having the world's most beautiful, serene, lovely, tender cat in my life, who is my cat wife, and whom I have endless hours of cuddling and bliss, whom I've invented 108 sacred names for, and who is the source of tremendous secret quiet joy, who's the mother with fur. I call her the mother with fur in my life. So never feel disempowered, never feel paralyzed, never feel that you are being abandoned by God. Do the practices so that you can feel the presence. Plunge deeply into the amazing sources of inspiration, both in the great arts and in nature, and plunge with tender compassion and vulnerability and gratitude into the depths of your relationships. And you'll you find that your whole being will be slowly more and more irrigated with a sober, steady, focused joy that will give you the courage to keep on trucking.
I love several of those examples, and I think what you're saying is plunge into it. It sounds that like it makes me realize the ways that I hold back, like might really enjoy some, but like you're just like reveling in the relationship. Like the cat is like 108
Oh
sacred,
my
just
God, yes.
giving yourself 100% to there's an opening to a loving, blissful connection, and just saying yes and going deeper and deeper into
Yes.
that's really beautiful and
Well,
inspiring.
don't miss the great party at the end of the planet. Don't miss the great party in the middle of the dark night, because what's going on is a massive and painful and horrific rending, a death of so much of all of the structures and thought forms of millions of animals, of people in Gaza. In the middle of that death, realize that the meaning behind that death is to make all of us love life with a passion, a vulnerability, a hunger, a gratitude that we have never found before. And if you can love life like that, you'll be filled in the middle of disaster with joy. I'll tell you something. 3 weeks ago, through a great friend in Doctors Without Borders, I spoke to a young 35-year-old doctor in Gaza, a Palestinian. And this guy, oh my God, Stephen, he's so amazing. He goes every single morning to a hospital where there's hardly any medicine, where he has to amputate without anesthetic. And he doesn't know whether his children or his wife will be there because of the bombs that are raining down on Gaza. And the guy is radiant. He is so filled with joy. And I said, how on earth, in the middle of this genocide, in the middle of dealing with children who've been blown apart, in the middle of operating without anesthetic, in the middle of fearing for the life of your children and your wife, do you sustain this joy? And he said three things. He said, there are three things that give me the joy I must have to be able to go on. He says, the first is that I love God. I just say every morning, La ilaha, he's a Muslim, La ilaha illallah. I fill myself up with the love of God. Second thing is that every moment that I have with my wife and children, I try and make as beautiful, as joyful, as tender, as compassionate, as loving as possible, because I know that I may not see them again, but I want them to feel at every moment that I love them. And the third thing he said, I know the situation is appalling. I know I may not survive. I know, but I am a doctor, and I turn up every day to do the work that I pledged my life to do. And as long as I turn up, I feel joy. I feel the same thing about being a teacher at this time. I know that a great many people are in total denial. I know I've tried to help people become sacred activists. There have been about 7 or 8 that have turned up. I know that very, very few people are really at this moment willing to stand up and do what's required. But that hasn't broken my passionate, intense commitment to go on giving everything that I have, because I know that when the full fury of the dark night hits, and it's going to hit soon, the teachings that I've offered with the other teachers on the planet that know this will be the bread of survival. And that's what gives me joy.
Hmm. Wow. Well, that story with the Palestinian doctor really brings it home that it's not about having beautiful external circumstances that
Oh
you can't
God,
do.
no.
No,
Those beautiful.
it's really, it's like
It's about
in the
being a
outrealm.
real human being. It's about being a real human being in love with life, in love with God, in love with the world, in love with the people you love.
Hmm.
It's about stepping outside your comfort zone, outside the neurotic ways in which you protect yourself, and just risking the great holy adventure of loving completely. And to those who turn up, in that mad, sane way, the divine pours joy.
Hmm. Wow. Thank you for that. I kind of feel like that was a profound transmission, and I feel like it would be good now to transition in and have you lead people in a guided meditation to open this channel in a deeper way in themselves.
Can I ask you a question
Yes.
before I do that? Yes, he says. Stephen and I have known each other. When you say you hold back, what in you holds back? What holds back? Because I think it's so important for people to identify the parts in themselves that actually prevent them from getting to the ocean of joy and being irrigated by it. What is it that holds you back? What is
I
it that
think
holds
I
any
think
of us back?
I think for me there's been sometimes a tendency to be generous to a point of self-depletion or self-denial, and then
Mhm.
and then I worry I sort of feel like, oh, I have to be balanced in how much I'm sort of giving out versus like replenishing in. And so there's a little bit of like I'm still working out that cycle in relationships and company and other things where it's like what do I really need to nourish and sustain my own being, and then how much, and that allows a certain capacity building to give back out. And sometimes the call to sort of give myself 100% into love or the moment can sort of also be a way that I avoid taking care of myself in that process.
Yes. How would you change that?
Well, what I've been doing is getting clear about what does my body mind really need and want, and being actually sort of blessing and being good with voicing my own desires, wants, and sort of
Yes.
sometimes it's like giving myself a day and just really unplugged and I did nothing, and just kind of give myself
Oh.
give myself the blessing of not having to do anything for anybody and just really enjoy being by
Oh,
myself,
I
you know?
get it. Yes.
Yes.
I think that's incredibly important what you've just said, because what you've said, can I can I
Sure.
reflect it back to you, is that a lot of us who are passionately concerned about the world, and God knows you are, and I am, we exhaust ourselves by really encouraging and doing everything that we can to inspire other people. And you have this huge shift network to run, and I have all the stuff I have to run. But it's really important to shift in the way that you have just described and realize that first thing that you have to honor and care for is your body and your psyche and your consciousness. Because if they get depleted, if they get worn down, then anything you give will be stained by that
Hmm.
secret exhaustion and will not have the full divine blessing, because it won't be irrigated by sane joy.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you. That's really true. And I feel like for me, some of the just being in non-action, Shabbat, rest is like it's like I feel like that's my holy practice now, is to give myself time and permission to do nothing, because I've got a lot on me all the time, hundreds of things and responsibilities and
Oh,
kids,
God,
properties and
no.
company, and it's just like
No.
to really say just commune with the divine and give myself permission to relax and enjoy that. That's, to me, is like where I cultivate the deepest joy, and then it can overflow into the activities. But it's for me, it's the rest, silence, quiet.
Stephen, do you know those wonderful words in the Gita, which really is what you're describing? In the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, this, it's astounding and it's so deep. He says the sage is the person who knows the action in inaction
Mm,
and the inaction in action.
mm,
And by that, what Krishna means, I believe, is that only the person who has soaked in the joy of being can actually act in a complete, full way, so that that being is present in the doing. So that means that anyone who wants really to rise to the challenge of a time as exhausting, terrifying, horrifying, nasty as ours really does have to pay the deepest attention to being. You call it doing nothing. I don't believe you're doing nothing. I believe that you're relaxing into the arms of being and feeling as you do so that massive, quiet, loving support that comes when you let go and let God catch you.
Hmm. As always, you describe it so beautifully and it rings as deep truth. So thank you for that mirroring.
Well, I think it's also the age in which you are and in which I am, of course, more so, is one that if you're not paying attention to the necessity to soak in being, the doing will become more and more fragmented and hectic, and you'll resent it, and the energy won't be as full as it needs to be. So that act of real primordial self-care by relaxing into being is an amazing, perhaps that's the fourth source of joy that people need to cultivate. This
Hmm.
is a long haul we're facing.
Hmm.
We're facing a long dark night, and it's going to get unbelievably darker. It's going to be ferocious. We're doing very little about the climate, the animals, etc., etc. Everybody knows this. So once you really get that, you realize you have to train yourself. You have to really bring together consciously all of the different modalities of joy and peace that you know so that you can last the great trek.
Hmm. Amen.
Does
You
that
want
ring true to you? Does that ring true
it
in the
rings
core of?
totally true, and it's good medicine to hear this at the moment because I think there were ways a paradigm of kind of driving and pushing to a certain level to make things happen that really in the last few years has had to shift for me, and I do feel a deeper level of fulfillment and alignment and being at home with myself or the universe that is coming with that, and then I think that means that the actions come from a different place. And so I really appreciate the reflection.
I think sacred action can only come from people whose acquaintance with being is profound. Because sacred action isn't action just taken by urgent emotional need. Sacred action has to have a clarity and a poise and an accuracy and a timing. And in order for those things to be as effective as they must be, the person who is acting needs to be in as joyful and serene and equilibrated a place as possible. I just had the experience of spending 3 years writing a massive and very difficult book on Mary Magdalene. And the only way that I've been able to sustain the terrible difficulty of it is by constantly relaxing in being. And when I was peaceful enough, I could be given the next stage. I think we're going to come to that kind of stage in the human race. I think things are going to seem so dark and so difficult that those who are reacting out of even honorable emotion will not be able to sustain their energy.
Hmm.
Those who will be able to sustain their energy are those who cultivate inner peace,
Hmm.
inner joy, inner relaxation, inner surrender. Then, in the storm clouds, rays of clarity will come to them and they'll be guided to do what is needed to be done in the most spacious and precise way. So, what I feel about, of course, I'm about to give, and this whole discussion about joy is that training yourself in joy is part of the training of the warrior midwife that we're all challenged to become of a new world. If we're going to birth a new world, it's not going to be out of hectic emotionalism or even agonized compassion. It's going to be out of enormous strength, fueled by being and illuminated by joy.
Hmm. Beautiful. Do you want to do that guided meditation now?
Yeah. No, thank you for dancing with me because I love you so, and I just wanted to hear from you where you are because this this is such a time. So all of us need to put our arms around each other and encourage each other.
Hmm.
Well, first, my dearest friends who are listening, I'm going to guide you through a gorgeous golden light meditation that will enable you to connect with the great birth that is trying to take place through this great death. And anyone who's ever been acquainted with my work knows that for me, this great birth is the birth of a new kind of human being, a consciously divine and consciously human being who has united the opposites in himself or herself. And this is a quantum leap. And part of why the situation is so agonizing is that there is an immense birth possible. Nobody's ever written about this birth and about joy more beautifully than Rumi. So I just like to prepare your heart minds with this gorgeous poem, which is on my fridge, which I read every day to remind myself of what I'm supposed to be and what am I supposed to do in this world. The whole world could be choked with thorns, but a lover's heart will stay a rose garden. The wheel of heaven could wind to a halt. The world of lovers will go on turning. Even if every being grew sad, a lover's soul will still stay fresh, vibrant, light. Are all the candles out? Well, hand them to a lover. A lover shoots out 100,000 fires. A lover may be solitary, but she is never alone. For companion, she has always the hidden beloved. Mount the stallion of love and joy. Do not fear the path. Love's stallion knows the way exactly. And with one leap, love's horse will carry you home, however black with obstacles the way may. To me, that is the job of the lovers now. In the middle of the madness, to be fresh, vibrant, light, committed, relentlessly, tenderly working inwardly and outwardly for the great birth that's possible.
Mm.
So let me just offer you this beautiful visualization. For me, as I suspect for many of you, it is the Divine Mother, the embodied Godhead, that gives the greatest joy because she is the one who lives in and as everything, spins the entire universes out of her belly like a spider spins its web. And as you connect with devotion to the Divine Mother, she gives you the secrets of entering into her palace of joy that is the created universe and everything behind it and within it. So the first part of this visualization is to imagine your own favorite form of the mother, whether it's Mary or Durga or Kali. For me, it's always Mary. So I imagine Mary above my head, and I imagine her lifting up her hands, and I imagine a pure, radiant, golden light flowing down from her hands, entering my head through my Sahasrara. So just imagine your favorite and most beloved form of the mother pouring golden light into you, the golden light of transfiguration, the golden light of divinization, the golden light that will in the end transform your mind into a sacred mind, your heart into a sacred heart, your body into love and joy's body. So let it enter your Sahasrara. And as it does so, imagine that it engoldens your brain. So your left and right hemispheres, instead of being separate, start to dance together and you become someone who sees and knows the divine directly through your intellect. And then imagine that golden light going down and illumining your whole head and awakening the diamond eye in the center of your eyebrows, the Anya chakra. Ah, so you have a golden brain and you have a diamond eye awake and the light goes on pouring. And then imagine it descending into your throat and opening your throat center, and imagine the throat center as a rich, gorgeous red rose that when the golden light that she's pouring into you comes to you, awakens and starts emitting the perfume of divine, joyful expressiveness. Ah, so you have a golden brain. You have a diamond eye awake. You have a rich red rose in your throat, and the light keeps pouring. She's not going to give up pouring until all of you has been engolden by her Mahananda, her great bliss, her great joy. And the light goes down into your shoulders and goes along your arms. And as it enters into your body, just feel how the cells and quarks and neutrinos of your body are so overjoyed to be kissed by that light because it awakens their own hidden light. Those cells have been waiting for that baptism of light for a long time, and they are so, so happy. So imagine them like champagne popping, if you like, something very vibrant and joyful. The light keeps on pouring, and you're starting to emit golden light, see it in your mind's eye, your heart's eye. And the light goes down to your heart center. And before your heart center might be shrouded with clouds of depression and despair, but as that great golden wave of light comes down, let it sweep away all the clouds around your heart and see what happens. Your heart emerges as its own center of golden light, as its own secret sun. So you have a sun for a sacred heart. You have a rich red rose for the whole of your creativity and expressiveness. You have a diamond eye awake. You have a golden brain. But the work of the mother goes on, because her work is to unify body and soul. So you're an embodied soul, a soulful body. And the light pours down, and it pours down into your hara, into your belly. And as the light pours down into your belly, imagine the belly, which is the place where heaven and earth meet. It's the place where you become grounded. Imagine that that belly becomes like a heap of golden wheat inside you. You've got a golden wheat radiating light in your belly now. You've got a golden sun for a heart. You've got a rich red rose. You've got a diamond eye awake, and you've got a golden brain. So things are going well. But it goes more and more and more into you. And then it enters the sex center. And before it goes into the sex center, you might imagine your sex center as crystal that is dusty and ash smeared from betrayal or sadness or grief or self-hatred or body hatred or sex hatred. All the stuff of the patriarchy is there. But this golden light that is going to renovate and recreate everything and unify you sweeps all that ash and dust off the crystal, the brilliant white crystal of your sex center, and gives you a whole new relationship with your own sexuality, and gives you the understanding that it is an instrument of divine love if you dare to live it sublimely. So your genitals are a blazing white crystal. Your belly is a heap of golden wheat. Your heart center is a sun. Your throat is a rich red rose. And your diamond eye is awake, and you have a golden brain. And then take it down your legs very slowly. Because in the esoteric systems of Hindu Tantra, many of the agonies and karmas of past lives are hidden in centers in the lower part of the body. And as you take the golden light slowly down, 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 down through your kneecap, down to the end of your feet and toes, just feel the mother, through her great desire to birth you as a divine human being, is cleansing your entire psychosomatic body, your entire aura, all the bodies that you are, the multiple bodies that are here. All of them are being cleansed of the pain and the trauma of the past. You're being totally, totally, totally renewed. So take it right down now to the end of your toes. And just feel, taste the simple union with total reality that you now are radiating golden light, the golden, alchemical, all transforming light of the Maha Ananda, the Mother. Giving you this practice not just to entertain you. I've given it all over the world, and I've got hundreds of emails from people who've said, oh my God, this works. This is direct connection with the birthing power of the joy and direct experience of the new kind of being that is hungry to be born in you, so that with that being in you, you can go forward and give your life inwardly and outwardly for the renovation of humanity.
Wow. Well, thank you for that exquisite transmission and the activation of each center, really the consecration of our whole bodies to that joyful dance of divine energy and
I'm glad you said consecration, because it's very, very beautiful. If you want a simple experience, you can't always do that um, in the order I can do it. Although if you memorize it, you can do it actually in 5 minutes in a way that is very transformative. But if you want to consecrate yourself in joy, I was taught this by an old Greek monk who was a wild old exorcist, actually. It's a long story. He said, look, if you want to experience yourself as God experiences you, you must learn how to bless yourself. And I said, well, how do I bless myself? He said, well, you know, in Latin, the word for holy is sanctus, sanctus. And in the Mass, sanctus, 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 holy, holy, holy. It's gorgeous. Wow, love sanctus. And he says, do it this way. He said, put your hand on your head and just imagine it filled with God's joy and love, and say sanctus, blessing yourself. Then put your hand on your heart, say sanctus, and feel God blessing your heart, opening your heart, clearing your heart, giving you joy to go on. And then just symbolically wipe your whole body in the air and say sanctus, sanctus. And it's amazing what happens when you just do something as simple as that, to remind yourself that you have been created out of the light substance of divine consciousness. That's the reality. That's the reality that all mystics know. So when you do this sanctus, blessing yourself, blessing your heart, blessing this temple of a body, you remind yourself of who you really are. And you allow that being to become conscious in you.
So
It's
true.
beautiful.
Santos, Santos, beautiful. Love it. Well,
Status,
Santos.
status, status.
Beautiful. Well, just brings joy to my heart to hear and experience this time with you. And I want to make sure we have some time to talk about your upcoming program, because I think it is such an important offering for all of us. It is easy to get mired in darkness or despair, and
Oh
to
God,
uplift ourselves, to be able to uplift ourselves in this way and to experience the radiant effulgence of nature in the midst of very trying circumstances is such not only a blessing, but like a necessity. So we're really blessed that Andrew has come out of his writer's cocoon to write, to offer another program after.
jail. I've come out of jail.
So the program is called The Ultimate Rebellion Against Darkness and Despair: What the Mystics Teach Us About Radical Joy, Healing, and Regeneration. You can find it against rebelagainstthedarkness.com, rebelagainstthedarkness.com, which is a fun URL and for an important set of practices and teachings. So there's no prerequisites for this. It's really just if your heart is, it's really if you're called to go deeper, to take this in, to work with the meditations, to peel back the layers of where you're holding back or somehow impeding the flow of the divine current of bliss and joy in your life. Andrew is here to be of service. So, Andrew, what if you would love you to share in your own words, really about the intention for the course, for this journey you'll take with people, and then I'll read out the module titles so you give us a preview of what's coming in each.
You know, you said rebellion against the darkness. That's true, but actually, you're rebelling for the light. You're through choosing joy, through choosing to be irrigated with joy, through training yourself to be an agent of joy. You're dispelling the darkness by rebelling on behalf of the light's truth.
Hmm.
So my whole prayer and plan for this course, which has taken me really my whole life to be able to offer, is that it will help you in the deepest way train yourself with all of the modalities of sacred and illuminating joy available to you. That's my prayer, so that at the end of the course, you'll have concise, succinct vision of how you, at any moment in any situation that you find yourself in, and in the situation of this growing dark night, able to align yourself with the joy that creates everything and lives in and secretly in everything and lives even in the dark night itself, so that you won't be discouraged and energized and step up to fulfilling your sacred mission on the earth and really acting to help in every way you can. So that's the intention.
Hmm. Module 1 is called Discover the Transformational Power and Joy of Radical Regeneration Through Awe, Gratitude, and Alignment with the Divine.
Very simply, what I've discovered is, and many people also know this, but I discovered it for myself through my own dark night, is that if you can understand the meaning of the dark night, that it is there to birth the divine human, then you can be awed by the majesty of the process and get through the pain of the dark night, because you've got installed in you the extraordinary joy that it will birth. It's rather like a mother going through childbirth. It's not always a very painless process. It can be a very painful process, but the mother knows that the pain has meaning. And knowing that the pain has meaning and that there is, as all the great evolutionary mystics have told us and have begged us to understand, and they've all known that this period would come, if we can keep the goal of the dark night to birth the divine human alive in our heart and mind and body, then we will be filled with awe, and then we'll become agents of regeneration, whatever happens. And then, with the grace of the divine, we'll be born as divine human beings, flames of the new birth to encourage others.
Module 2, be empowered in it by tuning your life to the joy of sacred inspiration through ancient technologies, mystical teachings, and the poetry of Rumi, Kabir, and Hanshan.
Well, I've talked a lot about this, but I think many of you know how inspiring great mystical poetry is. I think the reason why it's so important for us now is that we're living in a time when dogmas and the actual structures of patriarchal religion don't mean much to us, but we're famished for direct, naked connection with the divine. And nobody gives us that connection more gloriously than the three great poets that I've selected: Rumi, of course, always; Kabir, the great universal poet of India, the greatest mystical poet of India; and Hanshan, who was a Zen poet who attained the most naked, quiet, calm, joyful realization living on a mountain. So bringing these people into your soul and reading them as if they're giving you news of your own potential self, which is how I would invite you to read them, then allows you to go to them for inspiration of who you can be in whatever situation arises, and helps you dig deep into your native joy.
Module 3, be nourished by the beauty and power of the joy of creation to awaken your divinity and renew your spirit.
You all know how unbelievably transformative it is to be in glorious nature. Everyone listening knows that. But to make a true devotional act of constantly, as long, often as you can, going to the great mother that is manifested in nature and asking her to fill you with her joy and her power and her strength is an extraordinary way to stay as vibrant as possible. And in this section, I'm also going to be talking about something I've hinted a little bit about, is how much animals, the love of animals, can reveal to you of the joy of reality and how much joy they, loving them in an awake and conscious way, conscious of the messengers of beauty and truth and joy that they are, can fill you with.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you're covering a little bit of the module 4 that expand your awareness and sense of oneness through the joy and blessings of loving animals. And then module
I always create, well, now you know. Module 4 is going to be a plunging into. I wrote this book called Saving Animals from Ourselves. And what I came to when I wrote this book was understanding that one of the reasons why we're so depressed and so paralyzed is because we don't love our own animal nature. And one of the great blessings that animals give us is that they help us embody. And the love that they give us awakens a love for our own divine animal, and claiming your own divine animal and getting rid of all the patriarchal body hatred and sex hatred that has blocked very powerful sources of joy in you is one of the great blessings that can come through loving an animal deeply and receiving their overwhelming unconditional love.
Module 5, discover the joy of sacred friendship and communion with others as the nourishing and exhilarating presence of God.
You remember when you asked me, how do we cultivate this joy? I said relationships is obviously a very crucial part. But in my life, I've had mad stuff go on. I'm sure all of you have. But the thing that has sustained me most has been my friendships. And I've really, really tried to cultivate my deep friendships as sacred experiences, as experiences of the love of God radiated through my friends. And so I'm going to really describe to you what I believe sacred friendship is and how one can elevate secretly, quietly one's friendships into a sacred dimension and recognize them as blessings and cultivate them in ways that enormously enhance and encourage the best in yourself.
Module 6, awaken sublime sexuality and oneness with the universe through the devotional joy of tantric passion and the adoration of the other.
My God. And look, the great tantric systems of Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism, and actually also of the secret Christian Tantra that the Magdalene and Jesus knew. That's what my book is about. They all know that there is such a thing as what Bede Griffiths used to say to me, there's such a thing as sublime sexuality. He was an 86-year-old celibate, so I didn't ask him how he knew, but he knew. And he said, look, when you make love with deep love and worship the other as an emanation of the beloved and experience your lovemaking as a direct, naked experience of the great bliss of the mother father's lovemaking that engenders the creation, then your sublime sexuality will fill you with energy and joy. And that's something that I experienced in my own marriage, and it changed everything. The time has come for a massive understanding of this Tantra and how important it's going to be. Erich Fromm said something. He was a great psychologist. He said, necrophilia, which means love of death, grows when biophilia, which means love of life, is stunted. And one of the ways in which the love of life is stunted by the patriarchy is its horrific demonization of our sexuality. So reclaiming your sexuality for divine truth, for divine love, living it with that reverence and worship and respect, tenderness and abandon is, you will find, a transfiguring experience and actually helps in very deep ways the birth of the divine human. We'll get into all of that together.
And finally, Module 7, discover the transformational potential of the joy of sacred activism and the 7 laws for birthing new beginnings.
Mm. I should have mentioned that. This should have been the fourth of the three modalities that I offered at the beginning, because I'm sure all of you know that one of the things that lifts you into joy when you are depressed is actually doing something for someone who is even worse off than you are. So the most wonderful way of really connecting with the divine joy that wants the birth of a new humanity is to turn up in your own way as a sacred activist, actually make a focused, precise, relentless, humble contribution. In my worst moments, when I feel despairing about the world and feel that nobody will ever wake up, they'll never do it, I stop myself and I feel the dignity and truth and passion of what I've tried to do, what I've tried to say, what I've tried to write. And that kind of pride, it's not narcissistic, it's a divine pride. It's a pride in turning up again and again and again and giving. Whatever, whether it's accepted or not, just giving for the sake of giving and the glory of God. So sacred activism and really turning up and doing something with your own nature, your own resources, your own deep commitment to love and justice and compassion, that is a momentous and endless source of joy and dignity and self-pride.
Mm. Well, what a beautiful program, and clearly so much wisdom distilled into each of these modules. So it's all at rebelagainstthedarkness.com. You'll get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions with Andrew, which are packed with transformational wisdom and practices. You'll also get recordings, so you can go back and go over things, you do the videos and audios. You can listen offline. Also, word-for-word transcripts are really helpful to go back and study as well.
Oh, yes.
So you get weekly exercises you can do at home, and it's really about making these practices your own and also having a community to support you, which we have a Facebook community to support you, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. On the
That's
page,
such a wonderful part of it. Sorry to interrupt you, Stephen, but it's so gorgeous, that part of it, because in so many of my classes, I've come to understand that the joy that comes through finding people in your own tribe through that community is an immense one. Many great friendships are formed like that.
indeed, people often focus on the content, but sometimes the community is the most valuable thing.
Yes.
So on the page, you also see a number of extra bonuses with some of Andrew's beloved collaborators. There's a dialogue between Andrew and Cynthia Jewers called The Sacred Work of Standing by Gaia. There's also a dialogue with Andrew and Matthew Fox, another renowned theologian and Shift faculty member. It's called Experiencing the Joy of Creation. You want to share anything about that special bonus? I think you already recorded that one.
Well, I think of Matthew as perhaps certainly one of the very great teachers in the world. And his vision, which has been transformative for Christian mystics, of the cosmic Christ as this great force of love and joy that creates the whole universe, has renovated my life and hundreds of thousands of others. And Matthew at 80 is the most joyful. He's the Energizer Bunny. He's alive with joy, and he knows everything about the disaster and the craziness. But he also knows that the creation is saturated with this divine goodness.
Hmm.
So we had the most wonderful conversation about his work, and I was able to do something that I'd not done before, which is to read him some of the favorite passages of his work that has been so influential for me, and I'm sure will be for you. He's an extraordinary, extraordinary man, radiating joy in his 80s and still working his arse off to give everybody what he knows. I love him, and I'm so honored to be his friend.
That's beautiful. I just love the way you see people as well. So thank you for that. And there's a special bonus that folks get when you sign up by midnight tonight. And we always like to do this as a way to encourage you to really take the time now while you have the most connection with what Andrew is sharing and tune in about if this is the right next step. And if you do get that internal yes or inclination, there's really no risk of doing so. And you get a special bonus of sustaining joy in the midst of service and heartache. This is a dialogue with Andrew and animal rights activist Jill Angelo, one of the
Yes.
activists that has been taking deep inspiration. And so I want to share a little bit about that.
Oh, well, Jill is my right hand. She and I have been co-conspirators for 15 years. She is the executive director of my institute, and she's turned her own home into a sanctuary for battered dogs and guinea pigs and God knows what else. And she calls this Moondog Farm, and she knows everything about the horror of the epidemic of animal cruelty, and she suffers greatly from it, but she's also lit up with the joy that comes from serving your own deepest truth. And we had a wonderful conversation about all the different forms of joy that she finds in her very exhausting and very difficult life, but very amazing life, that keeps her going, keeps her able to keep going.
Amazing. Well, that's an inspiring bonus just by itself, and that's what you get if you sign up right away by midnight. So it's truly going to be an amazing program. I can say personally, Andrew's had the most transformational effect on me with his words, his inspiration, his practices. We've kept the investment very accessible. It's just three payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start on July 3rd, which is auspicious and sort of connected to sort of the birthing of a new nation, the birthing of a new
Oh
consciousness.
God, yes. Oh,
And
please,
so
please, please,
and,
Lord.
and then it'll continue on Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. And even if you can't make the live times, it is good to know you can get the full value with the recordings and the transcripts and the practices and the community as well. And I love the testimonials for Andrew. Things like this course with Andrew Harvey is the best online course I have ever taken, bar none.
That's so sweet.
Extraordinary, giving me the tools to embody my truth in the world. Passion is infectious and sincere and loving. Andrew pours himself into these programs, and people's lives are blessed as a result. So you're in great hands. And if you choose to move forward, you will also get that special bonus with Andrew and Jill. And it's all at rebelagainstthedarkness.com. So, Andrew, always a pleasure, blessing, honor to be with you. I love you and thank
I
you.
love you. Ditto, ditto, ditto. Thank you for all you do to keep the flames alive.
And thank you as well. And thank you all for keeping the flames alive in your life. And we hope that this has really helped to re-inspire you. And if you feel called to move further with Andrew, you're in great hands and you will be inspired, touched, and blessed and empowered and get to dance Tina Turner and have all sorts of wild things become your spiritual practices like
Tina Turner Yoga
devotional
is a
naming
great
of
source of.
devotional naming of your cat. So you are
Bless
in
you.
for a treat if you go forward with the sacred alchemy of rebellious joy as your path through turmoil, and that is going to be a beautiful program. So thank you, Andrew, for offering it, and thank you all for joining us here today. Many blessings.